We're thankful to the majority whip for rearranging his office a little bit to accommodate us. How are you, sir?
I'm okay.
Always an honor to be in your presence.
Thank you. Appreciate you very much.
We appreciate you. A couple things. One, the assault, once again, the renewed assault on the Affordable Care Act. And, I mean, that was the issue that won Democrats the House back. A day after claiming his vindication, he goes right back after an issue that hopefully will cost him again in November of 2020.
Well, we certainly are going to do our level best to make sure that people know exactly what he's up to. You know, I said, and it's kind of interesting because we had this press conference scheduled before we ever knew anything about him making this attempt to talk about things we could do to expand the Affordable Care Act, make it better, to address some of the issues that the courts indicate that we need to address. And then all of a sudden, he does this. So the day afterwards, we did have our press conference. And I said at that time that I was informed way back when I first got in this business, my old crusty state senator who said to me, after I had just lost my first race for office, he said, now you run again, because I'm sure you're going to get elected. When you run the next time, you tell the people what you're going to do for them. And then when you get elected, by God, you do it. But then you go back to them and tell them that you've done it. And we ran on that in 2008. We got elected. Obama delivered. But it took us 10 years to get back to people to tell them what they had. They did not know. In fact, we lost in 2010. Yes. We lost 56 seats because people misunderstood what we're doing, what we had done, and we didn't do a good job of telling them what we had done. And so the Affordable Care Act was used against us in 2010. Now, we had some other issues too, but the big issue was the Affordable Care Act. But then the law went into effect, and all of a sudden, people saw what they had, pre-existing conditions being dealt with. Little children born with diabetes now able to get insurance on the family's insurance policies. Women with breast cancer, men with prostate cancer, no longer having to worry about losing up a lifetime of benefits. So people like this thing, and now all of a sudden he says he's going to take it away. Well, I think that was a great gift for us, especially coming on the heels of the disappointing performance by the Attorney General in response to the Mueller Report. I can't say anything was wrong with the Mueller Report. I'm not too sure there's anything wrong with it. What I am saying is that the way the Attorney General is handling this is very, very disappointing. I think the American people need to be able to see what this report is all about and why that one little line was in this report, that he is not being exonerated for obstruction of justice. Right. And obstruction, to me, is the biggest issue in all of this.
Is there a plan to get that report? I spoke to the speaker on yesterday. She said if it is kept from you all, it will be kept at their own peril. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you agree. But
well,
is there a plan to get your hands on it?
Well, that's up to the speaker as to how we would do that. Of course, the chair of the various committees, I do believe that there is something in the law that will allow the Ways and Means Committee to get to Trump's taxes. Okay. I think we ought to pursue that. There may be something in the law. I've heard discussion about whether or not the chair of the Intelligence Committee can issue sufficient subpoenas to get to the bulk of what's in this report. I know that there will be things that will be declared top secret that we will never be able to see, but I'm not too sure you can keep all that from the chair of the Intelligence Committee.
Right. And the people need to see that. They need to see exactly, because even if there's no criminality, the mandate was to investigate any links, criminal or not, right?
Yes, it was linked to Russia in any way. Yeah. And I'm not too sure that it doesn't come clear if the chair of the Ways and Means Committee gets his hands on Trump's taxes, and you can show that there's money there coming from Russian oligarchs, as a lot of people think there is.
Yeah.
And if that's true, I don't know that you can get a better link than the money.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Another issue, HR-40. Are you supportive of the bill?
Yes, I am. I've always supported it. Now, I'm told I didn't sign on the bill last year, but when I first got up here, that HR-40, I don't know what the number may have been back then. I came here in '93, but the issue was being pushed by John Conyers.
That's right.
And I talk to Conyers about that often. So that has been around, and I've been here 26 years. So this issue's been around for that long. And it calls for the creation of a commission to study reparations. So I support that.
Yeah.
But now my question to everybody that I have this discussion with, what do I do in the meantime? Do we sit back and wait until we get the 218 votes that are necessary to create a commission, and then wait on the commission to do whatever it's going to do and make recommendations? Is that going to take another 26 years? And then we've lost 2 generations.
Yeah.
We have lost a generation since I've been here. And I told our friends in the NAACP, one or 2 of them got upset with me when I said to them that we were making a big mistake allowing affirmative action to be defined as quotas and preferences. And that's what happened to affirmative action. To me, affirmative action was a form of reparations.
It was used that way. I understand it was used that way.
Yeah. And so what we're doing with reparations now, if we let reparations be defined as cash subsidies only,
Right.
you know, if you say we want to create a commission to study the issue and make recommendations, why are we turning the whole campaign on cash subsidies? That's where we're going to lose this argument. So I've said to people, I support the study, but while they're studying, here's some things that we can do. And if you look up the word reparations, it means to make amends.
Right.
The root word is repair.
Yes, sir.
You know, I studied this stuff, and one of the great historians, French historian who wrote the book Democracy in America, concluded in one part of that book that America's greatness is not because it is more enlightened than any other nation, but rather because we have always been able to repair our faults. Reparation is to repair a fault. So how do we repair the fault in education? How do we repair the fault in what I might call housing or the infrastructure development? One of the big issues that we have in communities that are still suffering under the legacy of slavery. I represent these communities. And when I look in the counties, these rural counties, Jasper and Hampton and Allendale, I want to move in there now with programs to repair some faults. Are we going to have an infrastructure bill that hangs around with roads and bridges rather than looking at water and sewage, rather than looking at broadband deployment, rather than looking at those things we need to do to improve these communities? This is repairing the fault. So all I'm my 10, 20, 30
Yes.
saying that it's 10% of the money in this category must be spent in those areas where 20% or more of the population is stuck beneath the poverty level for the last 30 years. That's repairing a fault. That's closing a gap. That is making these communities better prepared for economic development issues. That's making the schools, giving schools the ability to have safe drinking water. There are schools in my district where the water is unfit for human consumption.
Yeah, yeah.
So I've been saying to all my friends, we ought to be able to run a two-track program here. Yes, let's create the commission. Let's do the study. Let's wait on the recommendations. But in the meantime, let's put these water systems in. Let's repair these schools, and let's get rid of the student debt. Let's fund these HBCUs. Let's fund especially the 1890 schools, the land-grant schools, where states are refusing to put up their share of the land-grant money, and nobody's talking about it. And I'm a graduate of one, South Carolina State, and the state of South Carolina has not put up its state share of the land-grant money in years. And I bet you have not seen a single headline about that.
No, yeah.
And I've been talking about it, and everybody says, well, let's tell them to send the check. Okay. I'll tell them.
Speaking of South Carolina, some people are kingmakers. You are a president maker, because people come through South Carolina at the end of February every 4 years. And lately, South Carolina has pretty much decided what is going to happen. And you have often had an indirect a say in that, with the fish fry and everything else, right? Amen? So what do you predict the same influence in terms of your state, February 28, 2020, and what are you saying? How is it looking? I know the candidates are going there. I think Corey's there tonight for a town hall. So South Carolina, from your point of view, at least from mine, still has the same juice, doesn't it?
Well, I hope so. In fact, Corey is at the land-grant school tonight,
That's right.
South Carolina State.
That's right.
The fact of the matter is, I'm trying hard for all of these presidential candidates to understand a little bit about the Democratic electorate. And you got the best laboratory in South Carolina that you will find anywhere in this country. You got a state that's small enough to get around it pretty easily, where the media market is not as expensive as you'll find in most other places, where there are 4 distinct cultures all in that one little state. If you go up around Greenville, Spartanburg, Anderson, Pickens, and Corners, up where Clemson University is, there's a manufacturing culture up there. If you go out to the PD, Florence and Horry and Marion, Williamsburg, where Francis Marion University is, you get an agricultural community, farming, rural. Go down to Charleston, the Low Country, Gullah Geechee culture. It permeates that area. You hang around Columbia, that's the seat of government. That is the center of the educational pursuits in there. In my congressional district are 7 HBCUs.
Yeah, wow.
So you go to South Carolina, these candidates, and that's why they spend so much time there, because I think they are finding that they are understanding a lot about Democratic voters there in South Carolina. So what I'm going to be doing, I have 2 daughters down there. They're taking these candidates everywhere they want to go. Right. Someone told me this morning they've been following the candidates on my daughter's Facebook page. She's got all these, one of them has got all these pictures out there. So what we're doing as a family is making sure all of these candidates get introduced to who they want to be introduced to. We make recommendations to them as to what we think they ought to be doing in order to get their messages done. And then down in October, somewhere around October, I'm planning to invite all of the candidates who are still standing to join me in what I'm calling a rural empowerment tour.
Okay.
Because Democrats have been disconnected from rural voters in recent elections. That's how we lost the last election. You know, when you carry Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, and you lose everything in between. When you carry Detroit and lose the rest of the state, you do fine in Madison, Wisconsin, it's in Milwaukee, but you lose the rest of Wisconsin. We have got to get reconnected to rural voters, and so I'm going to be having, I'm going to invite all of them to spend a day taking a look at what we as Democrats can do for rural empowerment. So this is what we're doing. Then sometimes after that, I might decide whether or not I'll be for one of, as opposed to the others.
I know. Well, and let me just commend you because, you know, the criticism has always been with Iowa and New Hampshire going first, that homogeneity is not that reflective of the Democratic Party. You almost single-handedly have made South Carolina as relevant, if not more important, than those first two states. I know the Nevada caucus is in there too, but that's important. And I appreciate your time, Congressman. Last thing, we always talk about history, and I was in the conference room, and we took video of it, all the pictures that you have of the original Black Caucus, the first Congressional Black Caucus during Reconstruction. Right. You are the majority whip. Right. Does that irony fall upon you that your ancestors, my ancestors, some of those congressmen on that wall had the whip, the lash applied to them during slavery, and now you hold the whip yourself?
Right. Oh, yeah. As you know, the very first one you saw to the extreme left as you faced the wall was the very first African-American to serve in the Congress from anywhere. It's from Georgetown, South Carolina. Yeah. And you come all the way down to George Washington Murray, who I've got Skip Gates trying to find out exactly what my relationship is or was, if any, to George Washington Murray, because there's a rumor in my family that he was family. Mm-hmm. And then there was 95 years between George Washington Murray, who left the Congress in 1897, and when I arrived in 1992. 95 years. Wow. The reason I keep those pictures up there is to keep me reminded, first of all, that anything that's happened before can happen again. You see up there Robert Smalls.
That's right.
I represent most of the same communities that Robert Smalls represented when he was here back in the 1850s. Of the fact that Robert Smalls, born a slave, got to be a member of the South Carolina legislature for 10 years and the United States Congress for 10 years. But when Robert Smalls died in 1915, he died with a broken heart because he had seen in the 1868 South Carolina Constitutional Convention all of his freedoms granted to him as a black person. He was also a member of the 1895 Constitutional Convention when all those freedoms were taken away from him as a black man. And he lived the last 20 years of his life with a broken heart. So I keep myself reminded of that. If you were to go over to my congressional office over in the Cannon Office Building, when you walk in there, you would see 9 black and white pictures of the original folks who filed a lawsuit to end segregation in the public schools, Briggs v. Elliott. Yeah. You see Mrs. Briggs right there on that wall. I do that to keep myself grounded, keep myself reminded of what those people went through and the fact that I don't come here because of my own doing. I come here because of a sacrifice made by a lot of people. And I'm going to do everything I can without insulting my constituents or my own conscience. Yes, sir. To make sure that every day I spend trying to make life a little bit better for those who must come after me. And that's why I'm so concerned about this new discussion. This is the first time that the whole question of reparations has gotten into the presidential thing in my lifetime the way it has.
Yeah.
You may have heard the word every now and then,
Right.
but now it's really being discussed. So we ought not let this opportunity pass. We ought to get everybody to looking at what we can do while we're waiting on the study to make sure we don't lose another generation.
That's right.
Before the results of that study come in. And we can do that with 10, 20, 30. We can do that by repairing these faults that we can easily see. Just walk into a school in Bamberg, South Carolina, and you can see that the school building itself needs to be repaired.
Yeah.
And that's why I took money out of my campaign to run a referendum down in that county in order to rebuild Denmark-Ola High School.
Yes, sir.
Because we got the federal money,
Right.
but then had no ability for the local people to pay it back.
Yeah.
So we needed a bond issue that the powers that be were not supporting. So we had to go spend money, go out there and beat the bushes and get people to the polls so we could get that bond bill passed. And now they're going to get them a brand new school, repairing a fault. They ain't got time to wait
Right.
for a study of a commission,
Right.
and then wait on the commission study to be passed by the Congress. You may recall when Bill Clinton first got elected president, he created a committee, a commission,
Yeah, you did.
chaired by our friend John Hope Franklin.
That's right.
Have
Yeah,
you seen the results? They finished the study?
I don't recall seeing.
You never have seen it. You never have seen it. John Hope Franklin said it. I talked to him many times about it,
Yeah.
and we have not seen the results yet.
So God give it. Well, that's why we have you, brother. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. The CBC we know is the conscience of the Congress, but this is a majority whip. And as I always say, the official national historian emeritus on all things. We should get the speaker to put that, do a motion on that. The national historian emeritus of everything, just of every institution.
One of the days in fact, when we get off the air, I just admire you so much. I really do. As you know, one of my joys of going to NAACP conventions is just to see you.
Oh, thank
Because
you.
I know I'm going to see you as soon as I get there.
Thanks, sir.
And I'm going to be with you until I leave. But there's one little issue that when nobody's looking in on but me and you, that I got to talk to you about real soon. Because you got to help me get to someplace I want to go.
Yes, sir. We'll do it.
Okay.
I promise. All right.
Appreciate you.
Congressman James Clyburn, the majority whip you all. Thank you.